listening to Driving Law, a podcast by Kyla Lee about all things related to the rules of the road.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Driving Law. I am Kyla Lee at Acumen Law, and with me, my co-host, Paul Doroshenko.
Yes.
Yeah.
Together in the office.
Together
recording.
in the office, but we won't be together for this entire podcast because we have a very special guest joining us later, joining me later, and that is Charles Sanders, who is a lawyer in the United States, several states, personal injury lawyer, gets multi-million-dollar settlements, and he's going to talk about some of the differences in our legal systems and a concerning bill that has been tabled in California that might turn California's personal injury system into something much like British Columbia's.
I'd like to have multi-million-dollar settlements.
Yeah, I know, right?
Instead, we struggle for every dollar.
Yes, that's fine. I like hard work.
I know, but some lawyers, they can count on that. They get that every once in a while. They'll get the big case that leads to big money, and that has never been the situation with me. Of 26 years practice, every dollar earned has been hard-earned.
Yeah.
Last week was a lot of hard-earned money, but certainly good results for clients.
Yes.
I was looking back at the IRPs that were revoked. Quite a few last week. Yeah. Bad policing.
I was going to say, is it because I didn't do any hearings last week because I was organizing a conference?
You set them up and I knocked them down.
I'd like some credit. No, it's fine.
Figured out the defenses in all but one, right?
Yeah. In all but one. And actually, you know what? In that one, I'd spotted it earlier and then I forgot.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, too many things on the mind. So let's talk about this turning the mood dark. Let's talk about this horrible case out of Ontario Court of Appeal called Robertson. I've been railing on it on social media all week.
And people are understandably upset.
Yes. So the case is about a constitutional challenge to the THC impaired driving laws, specifically the 5 nanogram per milliliter blood THC concentration limit. Because, as we've discussed around the time of legalization on the podcast, the THC concentration in somebody's blood doesn't correlate to impairment or necessarily a risk of driving. You can have a high THC concentration long after having consumed substances. Chronic users, medical users, frequent users, people with a lot of fat can have THC concentrations that remain sometimes for weeks after smoking.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not reflective of impairment. It's just reflective of the fact that you used cannabis at some point previously, and it will eliminate from your system the impairment aspect of it very quickly, but the THC will be there for long afterward. And this is known. It's known to science. It's known to it was presented in papers before the Senate and the Parliament. It was discussed as a weakness of the system, and here it was now landing in the Ontario Court of Appeal as to whether or not this was punishing people in circumstances where they're basically innocent of the threat of the risk factor, which is the impairment aspect of it.
The unfortunate thing about the constitutional challenge is it was a case of somebody who was not innocent of it. And the worst facts you could imagine. Dude fled from the police, was involved in an accident, and then a week later did it again. And in the course of fleeing from the police at that time, crashed into a minivan, killing a mother and her 3 children.
Yeah, bad facts making bad law. One would have hoped that a different case would have gone that far, and people keep talking about it going to the Supreme Court of Canada. The issue will ultimately end up at the Supreme Court of Canada, but this is not necessarily the case that you want to go to the Supreme Court of Canada.
Because you're pointing out, the whole reason the Ontario Court of Appeal upheld the law, spoiler alert, they upheld the law. We wouldn't be talking about it.
Well, we would be talking.
We'd be happily talking about it.
It wouldn't be a dark day, and it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
On the sad.
The whole reason the Ontario Court of Appeal upheld the law was essentially by saying, well, it doesn't, it doesn't matter that some innocent people are being caught up in this because the risk of impaired driving is so significant that, we need to manage that risk. And it's a reasonable thing that Parliament's chosen because there's no other way to, it's not like alcohol where it eliminates at a consistent rate from the body, and so you can know. So because people don't know the risk, whether they pose the risk or not, you have to criminalize it even if they're not guilty.
Yeah, it's a bizarre method of thinking, but it's like the direction of things, right? We've seen this in the last few years where um, we observed the charter being used over and over and over to strike down laws that were punishing people for conduct that was not like damaging to the public or criminal in its essence or where the evidence wouldn't establish that there was actually an offense. And the charter was very useful for that. And now we've moved to this situation where it's a different recognition that the government can make anything they want an offense and can basically write it so you can be innocent of any moral wrongdoing related to that aspect of the evidence and still be convicted of it. And the fact that you're innocent of the moral wrong or the doesn't matter.
The risk, right?
Yeah.
Look at the criminal law. The essence of criminal law is a prohibition, a penalty, and a public purpose. And there's no public purpose for people who are at 5 nanograms per milliliter and not impaired.
Yeah. But it's the same with the IRP scheme. The IRP scheme is again, it's administrative and it's a different thing, but it's also recognition that we're going to punish people who are innocent
And that's
in the IRP scheme. We accept that as a
Yeah,
as a society. We're going to
that's
pass that law.
fine. If you're listening to this audio only, I'm doing a lot of air quotes. That's fine in the administrative context. In the context of a regulatory system where innocent people might get caught up while the legislature is trying to perform its, functions assigned to it under the Constitution, that is understandable. But we should never tolerate in our society a situation where innocent people are caught up in criminal conviction. Like the fact that
Well, none of it's tolerable to me because for people, they experience it
I,
similarly, right?
I know.
Like the allegation that you did something wrong and you didn't,
You don't have the stigma of a criminal record following you.
no, that's true, but people feel it that way. They feel it like it's a stigma of a criminal record. You get a refusal, ASD refusal IRP,
That's
and where
fine.
you tried to blow, and
Yeah, I know. That's why my quotation marks on fine,
I
right?
know.
I'm like, I don't, I know I'm
But again,
fine.
now you've got a case here where somebody died because of somebody's
4 people died.
people died as a result of somebody's horrible conduct.
Yeah,
Somebody who's obviously an asshole and nobody wants to let him off.
got a 17-year sentence.
Yeah.
Kind of deserved it.
So kind of deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, I just like it just doesn't sit right with me that our it feels like a reversal of that old principle, that it's better to let a guilty man go free than to punish an innocent one.
Yep.
And, now they're like, well, actually punishing the innocent is kind of the cost of doing business.
Yeah. That's where we are. I
Slip into totalitarianism.
I think about this every once in a while. It comes back to me where I think, I back up a little bit. I was 16. I borrowed a friend's car. I returned it with less gas and garbage in it. And he chastised me and I felt bad about it. And I decided at that point that I would never do such a thing again. And then I became a lawyer and I thought, okay, I'm just here for a period of time in my life. When you're not a lawyer, it's not like you're a retired doctor. You can still help somebody. You're not a lawyer. That's it. And I will hand the justice system off to the next batch of lawyers when I'm done. And my plan was to return the justice system in as good or better condition than when I became involved in it. And I don't feel that we are there. I feel that the justice system is in many respects worse than when
Well,
I
you can
started.
comfort yourself by knowing it's not you that's making that the case. It's, you don't control everything about the justice system, and that there are many things that you and we have done that have made it better.
Well, on a macro level, or you can look at the rule of law being fundamentally undermined by the U.S. government, international law, and domestic law in all respects, to the point where people have lost any confidence in the justice system and the rule of law in the states because they can see that it's a completely fickle, arbitrary system. In Canada, I don't think people have that sense that it's a completely fickle, arbitrary system, but there's these things that do undermine the the sense of the quality of the rule of law and the protection of the justice system for us. And this is unfortunately, I think, one of those things that has that effect. And it's unfortunate. We are both believers in the rule of law, both in the sense that we're all ruled by the law equally, and the sense that the law is the ruler of everybody. But it feels sometimes like on a small level, like with the superintendent of motor vehicles, like the rule of law gets thrown out because they disregard like binding Supreme Court decisions. And so you're like, here's this case. The Supreme Court judge said this. It applies to you.
Oh,
There's
no.
this pecking order.
It's distinguishable because that was a Tuesday, and today happens to be Thursday.
Or and where's your remedy for that?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have one.
Okay. Well, that was really dark. Maybe before we turn to Charles, our interview with Charles, we should talk about
The ridiculous driver of the week.
to lighten the mood a bit.
Which is always the best part. I mean, there's been a few times we've had a darker, ridiculous driver of the week, but it's usually the thing that I'm sort of looking forward to.
We did get a listener suggestion again this week, and I just want to give a nod to it. It's not the number one for me, but I want to give a nod to the man on the Coquihalla Highway who was pulled over in his lifted pickup truck going 208 kilometers an hour with his son in the back.
Yeah, there was another person in a Dodge Charger going 207 kilometers an hour pulled over in this last week. So
Yes.
hasn't been, there was at least 3 big news speeding stories this week in BC,
The weather got nice.
all of which are speeds that were ridiculous.
But I think the best ridiculous driver of the week is the man that I told you about yesterday who was pulled over by the police butt naked. Nothing on.
Anytime there's somebody pulled over naked, they win the week. And there's been a few over the years. I mean, how many years of this podcast have you done?
I think he had the best explanation of anybody. When asked why he was naked, this man told the police that he was allergic to his own sweat.
There you go.
Which I don't understand how sitting on a car seat and sweating from your naked ass into it makes it any safer than sweating into your pants.
Um, That's just somebody's got a theory.
I want to see someone use that on like an indecent exposure case too.
I'm allergic to my own sweat. That's why I was naked. I had no choice.
It's so good. I love
Be
it.
here in this park.
Yeah. Anyway, that one will make me laugh for years to come.
Yeah, there's a few that stick in my mind. That one might be one of them.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you, Paul, for your contribution to the podcast this week.
Sorry, I started thinking about the one with the exhaust pipe.
That's the one that will forever live in my mind. I will be thinking about that'll be the last thing I think about before I die.
Oh my gosh, I hope not. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I'd die laughing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, thank you. And now for our interview with Charles Sanders. Charles, thanks so much for joining us. I wanted to start with a question about the obvious sort of tension between you and your practice and my listeners who are in BC and Canada. Since 2021 here, our population is not allowed to sue for pain and suffering after a crash, and not allowed to sue at all unless there's a criminal conviction. So tell me why you think our audience should care, why a U.S. plaintiff's attorney has anything to say. Hopefully.
Well, because I could just assure them, because most likely they're probably upset.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
they're thinking, why is it that I could collect more money for myself, and the plaintiff attorneys are making more money in the United States as opposed to Canada, where they use a no fault insurance. And all I could say to them is that, you know what, when it comes down to it, personal injury is not about putting extra money in the client's pocket to be able to go buy a new Mercedes and go shopping at Gucci. It's about paying your medical bills. And under the Canadian no fault insurance, it's the same concept as no fault in some states in the United States. Regardless of fault, and you're hurt, your bills will be paid out by the insurance company. So in the end, there's nothing to really complain about in Canada, because remember, I'll say it again, PI is not to put money in your pocket so you can go shopping. It's to pay off your medical bills that you needed treatment to put you back in the position medically and physically that you were before the accident.
But isn't that kind of why there's compensation for pain and suffering? If you only get your medical expenses covered, which of course we have socialized medicine here, isn't it more fair to get money for pain and suffering?
I actually completely was my brain. I have ADD. I was born in the 80s, and that was when they were diagnosing kids with ADD. So I completely missed what you just said about pain and suffering. But no, that's not there. You should be if a company. There's a lot of truck drivers that drive through Canada to go to with oil in their trucks and in dangerous conditions. So I think it deters not having pain and suffering deters prudence and following safety standards because if these companies that are these intra country trucking companies don't have to worry about getting hit with pain and suffering and don't have to worry about it costing them any money thinking, oh, my insurance policy will just cover their bills. What's their incentive to make sure they hire trained drivers, to make sure they sleep on time, to make sure all that stuff. So it it's the deterrent for safety. But I would be very upset if I was in Canada about no pain and suffering. At first, I was like about lack of paying your medical bills, but
But yeah, I mean, they don't, I mean, because we barely have to pay anything for medical bills unless it's like extra stuff like physio or prescriptions. Mostly what people are getting these days is just the money for their wage loss, and then they're getting that at like a
you have
percentage of their wage loss, not even the full amount.
because you got that's the only area. My clients always ask me when I get them their settlements, do I have to pay taxes on it? I say no. And usually I'll say, oh, they'll ask me, do I have to pay taxes on it? And I'll say, I'm not an accountant, but now I know the answer. The answer in the United States, no. You do not have to pay taxes, federal taxes on your personal injury settlement because unless it's related to anything related to lost wages. If you're trying to get lost wages, then yes, you have to pay taxes on it. So
Right.
I always need to tell my clients, lost wages are for losers, man. You worried about the one thing that the government's going to tax you on. Let's try to collect you money for your injuries. But you're correct. Canada, they have universal health care.
Yeah.
Uh, but I completely understand where everybody's coming from.
Yeah.
You know why they're upset. But don't tell Canadians this. Everyone from Canada, think about this. Every year, there's a new movement in one of the states to try to destroy the personal industry business. There's an act there's a law that's going to be voted on
Yep.
in California in 2026 called "Protecting California Drivers Against Self-Dealing Attorneys Act." It's
That's
gonna.
what they called it.
That's what they called it.
We certainly like
They're saying that lawyers are taking half of the client settlements when that's not true. We're not, and saying that we are giving kickbacks to doctors when not, saying that it fosters relationships between doctors and lawyers. Yeah, that's what the industry is about. But I was on a podcast earlier today, and we were discussing it the whole time. What that's doing is the same thing that having no fault in Canada is doing. It's going to make it. It's going to deter if that passes, and a lawyer and a client is guaranteed 75% of their settlement in their pocket, and the lawyer's contingency fee can only be 25%. Then most lawyers aren't going to take the average case. So the client is hurting themselves because there's not going to be any lawyers out there that'll take the cases, and there won't be any doctors to be able to treat these cases. Clients have to realize that the reason why they're receiving a large settlement is because of the lawyers putting in their own money into the case.
Yeah. And also, you're getting professional expertise, somebody who knows a lot about the system that you wouldn't be able to navigate on your own. Like an insurance company is going to screw you over if they have any opportunity to do so. So, you're paying for somebody to protect you from that.
I used to be an insurance adjuster. I was licensed in I think 47 states in the United States. And I handled horrible medical malpractice claims to car accidents, to truck accidents, and what people got to realize is there's a separate department, level 1 adjuster for clients that don't have lawyers. And their whole job is to try to get in there and say, "Hey, I'm so sorry this happened to you. If you get a lawyer, it's going to definitely, you can't talk to me. Number one, you're not going to be allowed to talk to me. It's going to make things a lot longer. Why don't we just settle out right now? I'll give you $3,000. We can call it a day. So their job is to get the client on the phone and get them to settle out if they think it's a case where they might have to pay out, or make the case go away. So you need to get a lawyer so that you know how to deal with these adjusters, because these adjusters on that level are designed to manipulate the unrepresented claimant that's stressed
Yeah.
out about their car.
I also I'm shocked to hear the title of that bill in California because the people who are the sort of most
Did I get it? Did I speak wrong? Can you?
no.
I don't want to grab my phone. What is the title of the bill? I know it's Against Self-Dealing Attorneys Act, but what is the name? I just want to be. Can you double check it? I don't want to grab my phone.
Oh, okay. Let me Google here.
Let me grab. I'll grab my phone too.
Uh, self
Yeah, I check. Yeah, I think that's what it's called, because I texted the entire act to the person I was on the podcast with today.
Protecting Automobile Accident Victims from Attorney Self-Dealing Act.
I was almost correct.
You're pretty good.
Because which makes no sense for California, because these cases in Texas and these cases in Canada, how much medical benefits they're paying out for either driver, despite who's at fault in Canada, is based on the limits of the policy.
Yeah.
So I remember when we were considering opening up an office in California, because my wife, it's like her second town, and we love to be there. So it's a goal. It's not a gold mine, but there's a lot of people in Los Angeles County. So I was discussing whether or not I would start an office, and I was like, yeah, but the policy limits are like 1530, which means 15 per person is the most someone can collect minimum on a minimum policy, and that policy is the minimum was like what you have to buy not to get a ticket. So
Yeah.
that's what people have. And I was like, it's just so low for California. It's so pathetic. And then some guy at a bar who's another plaintiff's lawyer tapped me on. So he was like, hey, man, I just wanted you to know that they raised it to 30/60, like Texas. I'm like, so you're trying to tell me that now you're making more money per case? He's like, yeah. I'm like, that's a good thing. And that was only a year ago. And
Wow.
that was protecting California accident something. So I got it confused. But they just increased the policy limits, the legislators. So I'm surprised that they let that law make it this far, to the point that it's being voted on by people that don't know what they're talking about.
I don't know if it's the same where you are, but here, when the insurance company is trying to fight people on their diagnoses and the amount of treatment and stuff it requires, they have their own medical experts that they can.
Same tactic. They do the same thing, no different. Every single low vol tactic that they do is the same thing that they do. It's the same corporate office.
So, for people who've never set foot in a U.S. courtroom like me, what is it like? What's a typical court day for
Well,
you
it
look like?
depends on whether you're in state court or federal court.
Okay.
State court's
Right.
more like the jungle, but federal courts, they don't mess around. Like, number one, to get in, you have to be on a list. You can't just get in.
Okay.
Even state court security is kind of like that now, but you have to have. But they don't mess around. You got armed federal marshals at at the at the gate. And then
Wow.
when you come in, you walk in, and the judge is sitting on this big pedestal, probably 20 feet above, with this big seal of the United States. And then, like, the gavel comes, and they're like, may it please the court, the Honorable so and so on the United States District Court. It is surreal being at a United States District Court.
And is that's an appellate level? That's not where you
Oh,
would
that's
bring
just if you're first. If there's a federal case, let's say you're suing. Let's say you're in the United States and you're suing someone on a question of federal law. Go to federal court. Or if two people from different states are suing each other for more than 75 grand,
Oh, okay.
go to federal court. Or if there's a state law issue and there's a federal issue that's related, they could ride the coattail. It's long,
Yeah.
complicated.
Okay. I just wondered how you would get
And
an
it's just like,
accident injury case into federal court, but now I get
well,
it. If you have the
well, like
out
for
of state
example,
drivers.
for example, Walmart loves to file in federal courts for some reason. Walmart, because because the judges that they've donated to their campaigns for years are elected for life. So all they have to do is get in and go to the judge, and you're always going to get favorable rulings from that judge because he's elected for life. So they want to be in federal court when the plaintiffs' lawyers would rather be in state court.
Okay. Interesting. So what do you think us here in Canada, we see these big verdicts. We never get verdicts like that before no fault here. Um, what do you think we get wrong looking at the headlines about your system?
Same thing that people in the United States get wrong. you yeah, remember in most states you could advertise verdicts that you that A never collected on or B were appealed down.
Okay.
So you could see, like my colleague just got a $1.6 billion verdict for a wrongful death of a couple kids. Now
Wow.
it's so sad, but a 1.6 billion,
Nobody's
your
ever
wife
gonna
is
do
worth
that.
$1 billion. That's
Yeah.
so, but I know for a fact that it's probably going to be more like 150 billion, only, 150. So it'll get appealed down. And also, it doesn't happen that often. You need
Right.
catastrophic injury, death, very, very bad conduct by the company. It's not that easy. You see it a lot in billboards, but I mean, it's hard to get $1 million on a case.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have. I mean, we most recently had a case that went for 15 mil, but it was a bus accident case. So it was a drive-in, drive-out that like you would drop off your son or your daughter at a daycare center, and that daycare center was in charge of providing your kids some snacks, busing them to school, picking them up, providing them a little snack, and then you pick them up. Bottom line is there was a bus crash on the way to school, and the driver increased her speed from 37 to 40 miles an hour. We knew she was being texted. She was texting. It turns out that the owner of the daycare center was texting her. They lied to the Texas Department of Health and Human Services. They tried to cover up the car accident. They admitted under oath that they lied. So when you have that bad a culpability by a defendant, that increases the verdict. That
Okay.
increases the settlement of the verdict. So you need really, really, really bad conduct and bad injuries, and it doesn't happen as much as you see in the advertisement.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Canada, yes, by having no fault, you are missing out.
Yeah.
Injured victims are missing out on pain and suffering and all kinds of different types of damages and other things that would be available to you in the United States.
Um, so are there any memorable cases you've had that stick out for you?
I just told you about that one.
Okay. Yeah.
And then another one. I had a Walmart case where my client, I had just joined my wife in our law practice. We didn't have anyone working for us, no paralegals, no sports staff, nothing. So I'm here 7 o'clock in the morning picking up the phone.
Mhm.
A guy calls. Sorry, I keep being told by everyone I have to stare at my camera, but like it's
Okay.
kind of up at an angle, so I'm trying
Yeah.
not to look at you. So basically, I get a call, and the guy's like, "I got run over by a tractor at a Walmart," and I was like, I couldn't understand how a tractor ran
Yeah.
something over at a Walmart. I'm like, was this like in the back where they sell? Is this like a Walmart? Because I'm from Texas, so there's a lot of space in between cities, and you'll be driving on the freeway between Houston and Dallas, and you'll see entire um, tractor dealers. I thought
Yeah.
maybe they're at a Walmart tractor dealership or something. But as it turns out, he was a delivery driver that went to deliver his freight to the distribution center in Baytown, Texas. That's a little tech town by the port.
Okay.
He walks in, he drops his stuff off, he gets his bills of lading. Bills of lading are like the bills that the receipt it was delivered. And then he walks out, and somehow a yard truck comes. A yard truck is a truck that lifts things onto 18 wheelers. Hit him,
Okay.
pushed him, and ran him over and pushed him across the pavement for about 30 yards. Luckily, he was a heavy set man, about 400 pounds when the accident happened, and that's the only reason why he wasn't ripped from limb to limb. And it had just rained, so the sidewalk was slick.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was so bad that Walmart, within a week, offered $100,000. Within a week, I didn't even file suit, but I ended up filing suit and got, I think it was 9 million. We could have got more, but he wasn't necessarily the nicest guy. I don't know how great he would have presented in front of a jury. He was kind of he thought he
Um,
deserved the money too much. I'm like, I know you deserve it, but you can't have that attitude. And he got sick of litigating for 2 years, so he took the money.
Now, can you choose judge alone or
No,
jury, or is it
You
it's
can,
always jury?
you can choose your jurors,
Okay.
subject to strikes and the other side agreeing with you, but you can't choose your judge.
Okay, interesting.
The clerk, like at least in Texas, in Harris County, the district clerk just randomly divides them. That I don't know their criteria
And
about
you
what.
always have to have a jury, like, you can't just do a bench trial.
No, you can have a bench trial, or you can
Oh.
still. You don't always have to have a jury. That's the last resort is a jury trial.
Oh, interesting. I would have
I've
thought
actually only tried, I think, 4 or 5 cases to verdict in my career, and that's 7 years. I could tell you there's been at least 10 times when we were set, we picked a jury, we had the jury charge, we had the instructions, everything was ready, and in the elevator,
yeah.
we settled the case with the defense.
Yeah, that's when
Happened
they
like
see
10 times.
when they see the whites of your eyes and they know you're serious, you're gonna
Oh,
take it
yeah,
to trial.
they don't want to risk getting hit with an excess verdict, like a verdict more than the policy limits that their insured has.
Well, that's very interesting because that's probably one big like misconception we have here is that you American lawyers want to go to a jury, play on the emotions, and get
It
lots of money
depends.
that way.
It depends, but it's very, very expensive and time consuming, and it's stressful.
Right. Well, yeah.
Very. I mean, I'm worried about like because I have this thing when I like to. Ever since I got veneers, I kind of go like I'll click my jaw, and then when you're in a jury trial, you don't want to do any of your ticks.
Yeah.
You're sitting there, you want to jump out of your skin. You don't want you're like, well, this guy just winked. He just said good luck to me after when before. What does that mean? It's like you're relying on other people. I like to say this: you're relying on people to make a decision. In a criminal court, it could be your freedom. In federal and civil court, money for people that were too dumb to get out of jury duty.
Okay, fair enough.
But we would have taken that to trial. We
I'll
would have
edit
taken
out
that
that.
all the way to trial if we had to, because the second a jury heard that, it would have been over.
Okay. Um, what about um like in the courtroom? Is there any sort of moment of those cases you've taken to trial that you're really proud of? Any great war stories you want to share?
Um, yeah, but I
Don't
mean,
want to give away anything.
most of the cases I've tried, I knew were guaranteed winners.
Right.
I don't try cases that I know that I think that I could lose. So
Right.
they
You would.
were very, very straightforward. There was never any like big what was his name? There was no big lawyerly what is it called? What was the name of that lawyer they used to say about the moment? Like it's kind of like the big lawyer, the big courtroom shocker moment in like Law and
Yeah.
Order on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was
It's
none of those, none of those.
okay.
Now I've had a couple divorce trials that have been like whoa, like a guy like I was cross examining my client's husband who had an affair with three babysitters that were like 13 years that were like 16 years old.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
so that changed the court. He got really mad, and like he almost tried to lunge at me at the trial. The bailiffs had to hold him down, and our client was awarded, almost 75 to 80% of the community property.
I was gonna say maybe he should have thought about that before banging the babysitter once, twice, and thrice. Um,
And
so
even divorce cases, never you don't want to go to court because then because with child, especially on child custody, because the rules of evidence, that's when like your character will start coming up. Everything it's like, oh, he wakes up too late in during the day. It's ugh, yeah.
all right. Well,
Family courts in the United States are bad too.
we only have a few minutes left here, and I wanted to ask you, with all your expertise and knowledge in this area, and the big cases you've done, and the fact that you've done it in multiple states, um, if you were designing the perfect auto injury system from scratch tomorrow, what would you do? What would it look
Well,
like?
well, the first thing I would do is I would have a fault based system.
Mhm.
Number one, I wouldn't have a no fault based system. Number two is I would make it required that all police officers in the city, if I would, it depends if I was on a national level. If let's say I was on a national level, I would make sure that every police officer, despite the severity of the crash, or despite whether or not there's injuries, file a report. That's the first thing I would have,
Yep.
and then I probably yeah, I'd make sure everybody had reports. That's a good question. I never thought about how I would design my entire system of insurance. It would be no fault. I would allow the policies. I would make stacking allowed. So
Right.
let's
Okay.
say, so do you know what insurance stacking is, or
I think
time
so.
to get into it? So basically, let's say you have 5 cars in your garage, and each of them have $30,000 on them. So okay, let's use 3 cars because then I could say it's 60. Then I could say 90,000. So and they each have $30,000 on them, and you have $100,000 in bills. In certain states, you could stack
Oh,
all the policies on top of each other, like add the 3 cars and add the 30, 30, 30 to get to the 90. I'd have stack. I'd have stacking. I'd have it no fault. I would have PIP being mandatory. PIP is called personal injury protection in the United States. that's offered with your own insurance.
Mhm.
So that means that's basically money designed to get you back on your feet or to pay light medical bills. Let's say you go
Right.
to the hospital, you pay for them. You pay for it. It comes in either 2,500, 5,000, or 10,000. So you
Yeah.
go to the hospital after a wreck, and then you don't feel like calling a lawyer, and you're not really that injured. You just got checked out. You send the $1,600 bill into the insurance company, and they'll pay it for you, or they'll give you money.
Okay. Yep, that's fair. We would call that Part 7 here.
And
Yeah.
I wouldn't make you pay any. I would offer everybody that gets a policy full coverage. I wouldn't make it a la carte and the charge for this and that. That means you get collision, you get property, you get uninsured motorists, you get everything all included in one.
Well, in your system, the insurance companies would no longer be multi-trillion-dollar
Yeah,
profit
they wouldn't be.
operations, which, would be
But I
a
charge a
valuable
high.
business.
I charge a high premium to offset giving
Right.
everyone for everybody.
Okay. Well, that
I only say that because I've seen firsthand what happens when somebody thinks they have full coverage and just gets the minimum and gets hit by someone without insurance, and they
yeah.
just have liability and no collision.
Do
I've
you have like an uninsured motorist protection element to
I
your
do.
policy?
Yeah, I do. I was just telling. Yeah. So basically, yeah. So with every policy, you have the option of buying uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. So if you're hit by an uninsured driver, if you're hit by an underinsured driver, your policy, if you pay for it, will cover the rest of your bills after you exhausted all the money from theirs.
Okay. Cool. Well, your stacking thing, I will share one little anecdote before you we wrap up here. Your stacking thing is hilarious to me because my business partner has 10 separate cars.
What
So
state did it in Canada?
yeah. So
Oh,
in your perfect insurance world, if he got hit, he'd have a huge amount available to him.
two states. I only know of one state in the United States that you could stack in. No, two states, Florida and Nevada.
Makes sense for Florida.
Yeah, but yeah, so you can't stack in Texas. No stacking in Texas. No stacking in California. No stacking in New York. No stacking in Illinois. So, all right. Well, I just wanted to say I assume that we're ending soon. Thank you. I didn't get a chance to thank you at the beginning for
Oh,
having me on. Thank you so
well,
much.
thank you for joining me. Before you go, would you like to share any social media handles or how people can get in touch with you if they have
Yeah,
any
yeah. So
expertise?
so like we are a law firm, and like I said before, we practice PI, we practice personal injury, some very divorces on very limited capacity and defamation. If you ever need us, our website is rosestanderslaw.com. We could be reached 713-221-3773. We got offices all over Texas and one in California. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm the Charles K. Sanders. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Driving Law. If you have been naked and allergic to your sweat, I guess give us a call. I don't know if you got a ticket for excessive speeding on the Coca-Cola or any other type of extreme speed, give us a call. Or any type of impaired driving charge. You can find us online at vancouvercriminallaw.com or 604-685-8889 and tune in next week for another exciting episode of Driving Law.